going to invite over Andrei Pitish, co-founder of VectorWatch, and Josh Liu, management and entrepreneurship at Kobe Global. Please make yourselves comfortable, gentlemen. Great to have you here. So I am not going to introduce you, so I'm going to let you talk about your experience for a little bit before we move on to the questions. Who would like to start?
Hey everybody, my name is Andrei Pitish, and as Andra was saying, I'm the founder of VectorWatch. Prior to that, my experience started as a programmer in the open source community. I was one of the first Linux contributors in Romania back in '93, and from that till now, I think my career and interest spanned things like from being a programmer to management, then entrepreneurship, and then back to management, and then back to entrepreneurship. So and passing through angel investing.
Awesome, thank you, Andrei. Josh?
Hi, my name is Josh Liu, and I'm one of the directors at Kobe. We are a subsidiary company of a bigger company called Foxconn. Have you guys heard of them? So we make iPhones, and we are the largest manufacturer in the world with 1.3 million employees. And for us to do what we do is that for big guys, engage with startup is really difficult. Because if you know manufacturing, volume and liabilities are the two most important things. But for startups don't have volume. Also, startups change things all the time. It's really difficult to really define the liability. And that's why we decided to set up a subsidiary company so we can be much more nimble and engage with startup in a much faster, quicker way.
Oh, I can wait for this talk. But before that, I'd like to ask how many people in the room have a smartwatch or another kind of wearable? That is a lot. And how many of you have a VectorWatch?
Wow.
That's quite a lot, too. Okay, so let's kick this off. I actually have a set of questions here, but Andrei suggested something that we should try something, and you guys should pick out what we should start with. So should we start talking about the challenges of building? Should we go into details about the technical aspects? What would you like to start with? Does anyone have a proposal to go on here? Okay, so let's go right into the tech things of it. Okay, so from your experience, where does this entire process start with when it comes to a startup? What should they look out for on the technical side? So many things.
So how many of you want to start a startup in wearables? Okay.
Why are you here?
Yeah, no, that was my next question, but it's hard for them to answer because there are many. So the thing is that if you think of the kind of values that a startup can create, it's oftentimes not what's obvious. So you've heard also Radu talking about VectorWatch and how we are focusing on technology. So and I was talking with my co-panelist earlier, and he said that it's very hard to make money out of hardware. Well, except for the factories, to be honest. Yeah. And so the idea is that if you focus on the technology and you build value in the technology that you create, you have something that you can later on get value out of. I think if you just make a hardware item, one thing, and you want to sell that, and don't have anything else other than that, and you have some technology around it, but like just a very small thing, it's very hard to get traction in order to compete in the larger scene. So yes, my advice to anybody who's in this field is to focus on technology and on creating value in technology, on the hardware side or on the software side, but not just in the physical product, but in the overall value proposition of the product and the associated technology.
Could you give us an example of, let's say, success story of adding value to a product on the hardware side and on the
I
software
can give you
side?
now Vector Watch. I mean, we've used the single most important aspect that we use, let's say, in marketing is 30-day battery life. And that helped us on the marketing side on the product. But what that hides is an entire software stack, starting with an operating system and then a mobile app and the cloud, that we've built purposefully for wearable technologies. And that adds value that that has an intrinsic value that was recognized by others. And, we can go on and license that technology and sell that as creating another revenue stream other than just the physical product.
That sounds very interesting, actually. I didn't know this about the business, so that's great. Josh, do you have any examples to this respect?
Yeah, so my colleagues told me that they got a chance to play with different kind of technologies, and thanks to those big clients. And so, for example, battery is a big issue. So now we see people doing paper batteries, and it's very thin, very small. We see people doing fast charging, so wearable can be charged in 10 seconds. So technology is getting better and better, but the whole concerns about wearables there is really about retention. That people buy that after 1 or 2 months and they don't use that anymore. So for entrepreneurs, so what's the use case that you are trying to create that people want to use your wearable, whatever that will be, every day or on a really frequent basis? I think that's the key challenges there. And then if you talk about technology parts there, and then different guys ask other people, we can definitely support you to do something that you want to achieve. But the real question there is that, do you have a business? And can you really build something that can really achieve something that other wearables cannot achieve, which is, again, retention issues there.
A question related to this. Sorry, did you want to add something?
Yeah, no, on the retention issue, I mean, we find that a lot of our users have the opposite problem, that they cannot wear other watches because they grew so, because they are now used to having notifications and everything on their wrist. So when they wear another watch and it doesn't. However, and that is true for other smartwatches as well, right? But having the 30-day battery life helps a lot finding the watch charged every day and you use it, It's not like you have to, if you forget charging it, then of course you don't use it anymore. So retention, retention is good. I would argue that for business, sometimes retention is not that good because you want them to buy another product, So it depends. In the hardware world, retention is good in a sense that you have more data. If you sell the data, it's important to have retention. If you sell the product, it's important to create a product offering that allows somebody to buy more of what you sell.
Very, very good point. And about this retention issue, I'd like to ask if, from your experience, you've seen that wearables development is rather driven by customer needs, or is it fueled by the wearable maker's desire to push innovation barriers or push a product into the market? Because we're seeing kind of a flood from a neophyte's perspective. From my perspective, I'm seeing kind of a flood in this area, and not all of these products seem to suit the user's needs, so they're not exactly MVPs.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about an MVP in the hardware world because you have to make it and then you wear it. The truth is that the truth is somewhere at the middle. So it's of course, because you cannot A/B test a product like we built, because it has to be built before you test it, and it's very hard to build a lot of variations of the same sort of the product. However, if you build it in such a way, and we go back to the technology, if the technology is flexible enough that it allows you to build apps and to build features on top of that, and you listen to the users and you have a good, customer support feedback loop that tells you what the customers want, I think yes. I mean, it's a blend where you push the product, then you get feedback and improve the product.
Got it. What about you, Josh? What
Yeah.
have you seen in the market?
I probably agree with you. I think wearables do have some troubles nowadays because IDC just a report about wearable shipping in the Q3, and then compared to the Q3 last year, it dropped 51%. And so, of course, there's many issues there. For example, like Apple delayed their kind of Apple II, so people were waiting and this and that. But having said that, actually, you can see that the specific kind of specialized players are doing better. So, for example, like Garment, they build wearables for kind of training, right? If you are training for swimming, running, marathons, you want to use that. And then that's a really good use case. Also, people, again, come back to retention. People want to use that every day because they are training for performers. And we see actually niche players seems to do better than the generic players there. And again, if you are in the generic player market there, you are facing big guys. And Apple is there, LG, Samsung. And then for the people who wear generic wearables, what they want is something that can do everything. And it gives you a lot of big challenges there. That's why those big guys trying to build platforms so people can build apps on top of that to satisfy all the possible needs on wearable. But how to build a platform business, again, and that's a big challenge for startups. And so those are all big questions that if you are thinking about doing a wearables, you probably need to really know which areas we want to play. Are you trying to be a niche player? Are you trying to be the generic players there? And also, what's your strategies in those spaces?
So I think we can all agree that you have to be a bit more experienced to start a hardware startup, a wearable startup, than going into software alone, because maybe the learning curve is different. From a product development perspective, given the situation, what is the biggest challenge? Is it making the hardware? Is it defining the best UX? Is it positioning the product? How would you rank these challenges from your experience?
There are like 30 more challenges that you haven't mentioned, and all of them are equally complicated. I couldn't rank them other than, time would rank those things. But the thing is that when you do create a wearable, and back to what you were saying before, the problem with a new category, which is the smartwatch, is that actually nobody knows how to use it. There's not a single use, and by judging at our user base, almost everybody finds out different values in our product and buys it for different reasons and sticks to it for different reasons. As an example, I use it to wake up in the morning. I have to have it. I have to wear it when I sleep. It's impossible not to, anymore. Now that I have it from the beginning, because I don't want to, disturb my wife when I wake up, and it's the only way. And if I try another wearable to do that, the same thing, I'll have to charge it. So I'll have to remember to charge it during the day in order to wear it during the night. So it's good not having to charge in order to have this, And so the quick answer is that either, and that's a good thing, either you are niche, like some of the wearables that we saw, like a medical wearable, like for the knee, and you attack a niche, and then you sell mostly B2B and B2B2C, and I think that's a good avenue, because you get you get initial orders, because also stock management is very important. So it's good to know. If you sell B2B2C and you get a contract with a couple of hospitals or whatever, and they order 10,000 pieces or 100,000 pieces, then you know how much capacity you need from the factory, and you know how much to reserve, and then the price that you make it at is smaller, right? Whereas if you build a wide-ranging accessory that you want to sell in different parts of the world, then you have to estimate the stocks, and you have to allocate, and then that the whole supply chain, distribution chain issue that arises from that, and cash flow and everything. I mean, it's like, and also, you know, I mean, this time it's product and it's marketing and it's sales and it's, you know.
Talking of that, I'm quite excited to see how AI can change the whole wearable things. So when your device is getting smarter, and maybe again, I talk about retention all the time, maybe you can start to overcome the retention issues there. So have you guys seen the movie Her? That's the earphone that can talk to you, and which probably can be possible really soon, right? Talking about a headphone that can interact with you, and wearable that can interact with you. We now see companies doing kind of, so most of the trackers now just track your health data, but some companies are doing coaching services on top of that to help you to train yourself. And again, which is a really good use case of AI. And then so when, I don't know how long you take, but when AI start to play a big role in wearables, and that can be quite exciting. And later on, at another panel at 5 o'clock, a good friend of mine, Tech, he's investing in AI, and then he probably have really good views around that field as well. And all in all, I'm just hoping that maybe AI can really change the whole paradigm and then the whole landscape, and to make wearables really exciting again.
Indeed, we have a talk about AI coming up tomorrow, so that would be a very interesting kind of completion.
And I mean, it's the innovation curve. I mean, I think that what we're seeing here is the dip. I mean, it was the big excitement, it was the peak, and now we're seeing the dip. And after that, I mean, usually this is, you know, it's pretty common. It starts, you know, the steady growth, you know, steady growth and stabilizing, which is smaller and is probably not going to reach the peak. But it's, you know, I think it's coming because all this data, and this is what that feeds into the AI systems, it's starting to prove to be beneficial. So studies start to confirm that this is, it's beneficial to look at this data. So I'm pretty sure that companies will find better and better ways to do retention of their devices and to make them even more intelligent in order to, you know, to improve. In my opinion, I mean, if you, you know, improve health and save time are the most important things that the wearables are trying to solve.
True. Given that we've talked about what we're hoping will improve wearables and what makes them successful, let's talk a bit about the pitfalls of that startups going into wearables or developing a wearable already should kind of avoid. Andre, what can you tell us from your experience? What kind of challenges you came across that you did not previously anticipate?
It's going to take a while. I mean, how much time do you have?
About 5 minutes until we go to questions.
So in 5 minutes, I can tell you that, you know, we've looked, when we started, we saw Pebble. Pebble was already launched, and I know Fitbit and Jawbone were making already a lot of money from selling bracelets. And then we saw a lot of companies doing projects on Kickstarter and raising 1, 2, 3 millions and never delivering. So those were teams, those were essentially marketing teams that were able to do a very good Kickstarter program, promising some incredible things that they never delivered. I mean, there is the money, they never delivered. On the other hand, we also saw very talented technical teams able to deliver a product, but they never made it to Kickstarter because they never had any marketing people or any, you know. So I think the biggest hurdle that a startup has to go over is to gather a diverse set of people that have skills and knowledge in all these areas. And that's hard, that's difficult, and but that's also the only way and the only creative way of going forward, you know, because you have ideas from different people. And like I said in other conferences, I mean, the important part is to hire people that are smarter than you, and some of them are here. I see them in the front and second row. And that's I think what differentiates us from everybody else is having like the best team, and everybody here is the best in their field.
Got it. That sounds great. Josh, given that you've worked with more startups in this area, what have you seen them kind of fight against that they didn't plan or anticipate?
I think for startups, no matter what you do, you just need to be really resourceful. And when it comes to hardware or wearables, and as Andrew just said, that there's a lot of challenges there. You might have a strong technical team. You can build a really fancy working prototype. But again, how to make thousands of that is another matter there. And then that's where we see a lot of companies die. Even like I'm from the UK, so we see really good team from Cambridge, Imperial, top engineering universities. They know how to build prototype, but they don't, or they haven't really thought about how to scale that. And again, that will cause other issues as well. And then having said that, we actually see teams in Silicon Valley. I think they are doing a really good job to leverage the resources in Asia, in the Far East. And because that manufacturing know-how in Far East, we accumulated a lot. And then those are another strength in the West. But then how do you get a kind of best from both worlds there to really make sure your product can deliver is something that I think startups in Europe need to do a better job. And that's also something that I'm quite passionate about to see how we can help startups. And a lot of people talking about Shenzhen, and many of them probably don't know, like actually Foxconn is a Taiwanese company, and Taiwan is quite strong in that as well. So Apple Watch is not Foxconn's customers, but it's Guangda's customer. And that's yet another Taiwanese company. And then so in Shenzhen, in Taiwan, you have a lot of know-how there that can be unlocked, or for you guys to leverage, if you know how. And so those are the things that I think definitely you need to be more aware of, and then to think about how to be more resourceful. And when it comes to, again, manufacturing, is that there are so many small things that can just kill you. So I don't need to mention about Samsung's Note 7, because that's a disaster. But even for Fitbit, when they launched their second generations, they had issues about their band that can irritate people's skin. So small things like that can cause some problems on the startup side. And you, when you are exciting prototyping your idea, you probably never really thought that far. But from manufacturing side, we talk about liability all the time. That's something that manufacturing side partners are really, really kind of cautious about. And if you can really work with decent, trustworthy manufacturers early, and probably they can give you those kind of input to really point you to the right places that you should pay more attention to.
Very insightful advice, even for someone who works outside of this wearables industry. I think we're going to go to questions now. We have time for about 2 or 3 questions. So, who's curious about wearables, and what are you curious about? If not, I just can keep going. I have more questions on hand. So we're going to keep going. Okay. Let me ask you something, your opinion on something I read. On January 1st this year, someone wrote on Wired that wearables are going to start to disappear next year to become less noticeable in their presentation and less demanding in their interactions, while giving us more data about our bodies. How did this compare to what actually happened this year?
I think that, I mean, in my mind, the fact that it still, goes to the curve of innovation. So now we'll see less and less talk about wearables, but in reality, we'll see more and more people wearing them. It's going to be less talk and more, that's what I see. And I think that data is very important, and that's why somehow, AI becomes the next hot topic, because then you have enough data that you can run the AI algorithms on, and you can draw conclusions that are statistically relevant to a larger population.
I think people use the term wearables less and less. So you can say that that's a smartwatch space. And in smartwatch space, we definitely see that the market, as you say, is more stable. So you can say it kind of start to consolidate. So big guys start to own the top kind of rank there. And even Microsoft, they gave up on their band. They just feel like they couldn't really compete to really play an important role there. But for small guys, and you can see startups play on different niches. and then on headphones, on helmet, on different kind of things, and then people call that wearables less and less. That's how I noticed. But I think that's a good thing. So again, it comes down to what are you building? Are you building a smart band for elders, for babies, for pregnant women? Are you building shoes for handicapped people that to help them to walk better or whatever's there? And I think that the possibility is kind of a lot there, which is quite exciting for me.
One last question on my part, because I work in cybersecurity, I have to ask, should this be a responsibility that concerns software, hardware, both the maker, the user, who should be responsible, and are startups or companies that are developing wearables aware enough of this issue to kind of include it in their plans from the beginning?
Yeah, I think that this is a major oversight for many startups. They forget to include cybersecurity in their pitch deck, definitely, and also in their plans. And I think that they need to focus more and more on that, because we've seen also the DDoS that happened from like all sorts of devices that were never built with security in mind. And this is, security in this world is going to be more and more important, and specialists or companies that are in this field, in my opinion, are going to be as hot as AI companies in the same field. So yeah, security is very important. And in terms of data privacy, as it pertains that the end user, then there's all sorts of European laws and then American laws, and I think this is where it starts being complicated, and there's all sorts of laws that right now we don't see them, but they're going to be effective soon, and they started to be effective, and there's going to be implications that we don't understand yet.
I feel like, how to say this? I think that's last week they had a big kind of hacking attack on IoT devices, and which is actually, in my opinion, is a good thing, because certainly people are more aware that actually a lot of IoT devices are not really secure. But to be honest, I feel reality is that is probably something for platform players to really start to pay attention, doing a good job. And then if platform is there and also very secure there, and then startup can start to leverage that platform to build things on your use case. And asking startups to really take care of things on different layer of the stack, I think that's just too much. But I'm sure that all the big guys, player guys, platform guys, are gonna pay more attention to security from now on.
Yeah, hopefully everyone will take that a bit more seriously, for the sake of the entire industry, of course, because all our data safety depends on it. I think that's about it for our time for now, but we could take one question if someone does have a question.
Hello.
Do we have a question from the audience?
Yes,
Okay,
I have
great.
the mic. I'm up here. My name is Ciprian Rus. I'm from Digital Citizen. I'm a journalist here, so that's why I attend this session. A question for Andrei Pitish. I've tested many wearables, and personally I think the future is for wearables that solve health issues like Garmin does or Fitbit or Jawbone. And I think the current smartwatch is too generic and too dependent on the smartphone. Therefore, I can live without, because it doesn't offer too much additional value. What's the future for Vector? In which direction do you plan to go? Because I imagine you will do different Vector watches in the future.
Yeah, but that's, let's say, imagination, and everybody imagines that. As I was saying earlier, we are focusing on technology and on licensing the technology to other wearable makers. So right now, there are no current plans for a Vector Watch 2 or anything of the sort. We are refining the platform, and we are building more on the platform, and giving access to third-party developers to develop apps on that. And let's say we're more on the platform play for low energy devices, where there's nobody at the moment, and we see that as the opportunity. And I'm pretty sure that if you want, we can discuss a little bit more than that, but it's something that the Romanian press doesn't really pick up very seriously. I think the watch is very flashy and everybody sees that and understands that. And I think that less people understand that platform play. And this is something that we need to, to discuss probably even better, although this being a B2B offering is not that, interesting. And to be honest, also the exposure that we got was also, I mean, there's a lot more cooler companies doing a lot of very cool technology stuff out there that nobody knows about, because not everybody understands what they're doing. Whereas what you see from what we're doing is the watch, and everybody understands the watch, and that's an interesting way to put it.
Great, thank you, Ciprian. Thank you, Andrei. Thank you, Josh. If you still want to talk to our guests, they'll probably be around for a while, right? So you can go pick their brains and find out what this whole wearable things could take you. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.